Okay, grade 9, this is your chapter 7 final on polynomials, multiplication and division. This is the test you got back, and your due date for the corrections is Wednesday. So make sure that when you do your corrections that you have what I did wrong and what I should have done on a separate piece of paper for each of the questions. That way I know you understand the mistakes that you made. The first question says, x times x is the same thing as or is equal to 2x. The answer for that is false. 2 multiplied by x is the same thing as 2x, but x multiplied by x is actually expressed as x squared. Now, if x happens to be 2, then 2 times 2 is the same thing as 2 squared. But because x is unknown, it's a variable, x times x is really x squared. Question 2, x plus x squared equals x cubed. Again, this is a false statement, and the reason why is because it goes back to chapter 2. You cannot gather like terms if they do not have the same base and exponent. So therefore, x plus x squared is still just x plus x squared. You can't gather or add those two terms together because they are not like terms. Question 3 says 5xy squared and 5x squared y are like terms because they have the same variables and the same degree. That again is false. In order for these two terms to be the same, they have to have the same variables, which x and y are. But this is a degree of, this is an exponent of 1, this is an exponent of 1. So in order for them to be like terms, you would have to have the exponents be the same. So those would be like terms. And if I made this -3, those are like terms, and if I was to add them, for example, they would simplify into those two. Question 4, when you divide the binomial 2x squared minus 2x by -2x, when you simplify it, it'll become a binomial. So remember, if I had this multiplying instead of division, remember that with distributive property, you would multiply it like this, and each term inside the brackets would be multiplied by -2x. However, when we divide it, the same thing is true, except every term in the binomial that you're dividing by is divided by -2x. So what you want to do is you want to take that first term, -2x squared, and divide it by -2x. And then you want to take that second term right here, which is -2x, and divide it by -2x. You want to write it as two separate things. 2 divided by -2 will be a -1. X squared divided by x will be an x, so you get a -1x. But when you have a coefficient of -1, you could simply write it just being a -x. -2 by -2 is a 1. X by x is a 1, so 1 times 1 is going to be just 1, or a +1. So when I put these together, that positive symbol really comes into play because it's going to act as your positive, or your plus sign. And therefore, when I simplify that, I end up with a binomial, or two terms. Question 5 is the binomial 10x to the cubed, take away 5x squared, divided by 5x. So again, all it asks you here is what happens when you simplify this? What does this become? So 10x cubed divided by 5x. And the next one is -5x squared divided by 5x. What is this going to be? Well, 10 divided by 5 is going to be 2 over 1. X cubed over x is going to be x squared up here, and 1 down here, so 1 times 1. So those are going to be gone. Those are canceling out. 1 times 1 is just 1. So I'm left with 2x squared in my numerator, and 1 in my denominator, which is 2x squared. -5 over 5 is -1 over 1. X squared over x will just be an x. So again, we have that -1x, or -x, or -1x if you want, and it becomes a binomial. So therefore, the answer is true. Now we get into simple multiplication of monomials and monomials. So here we have 2x multiplied by 3x. Remember, 2x is really 2 times x, multiplied by 3 times x, which is 3x. When you multiply any string of numbers, the order in which you multiply them does not affect the product. So I can rearrange this to be the numbers, which is 2 times 3, which will be 6. And x multiplied by x, just like the first question, will be x squared. So your answer for 2x times 3x is 6x squared. In 2y times -4x, I got 2 times y, which is 2y, multiplied by -4 times x, will become 2 times negative 4 times x times y. I'm going to rearrange my terms so they're in alphabetical order because we were told to do that. Then I'm going to end up with negative 8 xy. Now, if you had yx, you have to rearrange your terms within your monomial to be alphabetical, and that's your answer. In the next one, we have this question. Now, this is the same thing. Sometimes it's easier to look at it in a more common way that we see it. This is really the same thing. So this is going to be a negative 2. X over x cancels each other out. I'm left with y. So your solution is negative 2y. Your next question requires distributive property. You're multiplying a binomial by the monomial 10x. So each of those terms in the brackets have to be multiplied by 10x. So the first one will be 10x multiplied by 2x squared. And the second one will be 10x multiplied by negative 3x. Notice how that subtraction sign became the negative of the 3. This will be 20x cubed because this is 10 times x and 2 times x, which is 20, and then x times x is x cubed. This will be negative 30. X times x is x squared. When I then bring these together, I end up with my binomial answer. 20x cubed minus 30x squared. Now remember, you can't subtract those because they're not like terms. X squared and x cubed don't share the same exponent, so they can't be added or subtracted. The next question, you have a weird way of looking at something. You've probably never even written that, but if I was to write it this way, in a way that we're more familiar with, this would be the same question, okay? So because of this, we need to use distributive property. Each of those terms need to be divided by 2. So we'll have 12xy divided by 2, and we'll have negative 2x divided by 2. This will become 6xy. This will become negative x. And when I squeeze those together, I end up with my answer of negative 6xy minus x. And again, you can't add or subtract those terms because they're not like terms. Next question is a binomial multiplied by a monomial, so we need to use distributive property again. So 2 times x multiplied by 4 times b times c is the first one. Then 2 times x multiplied by 10 multiplied by b multiplied by c. So the first one I'm going to get 8 because that's going to take care of my coefficients. Now remember, keep them alphabetical. So x is not the next one. I'm going to do with my b's, which is b squared, then my c, then my x. So when I multiply 2x by 4b squared c, I end up with 8b squared cx. And this next one, my coefficient will be 20, or a positive 20, a b, a c, and an x. And again, I can't add those together because they're not like terms. So the solution to that question will be 8b squared cx plus 20bcx. Next question is distributive property of a trinomial. This is 1, 2, 3 terms up here in the trinomial, and they're all going to be divided by negative 2. So I'm going to have negative 4x squared divided by negative 2. That's the first one. Then I'm going to have negative 2x divided by negative 2. That's the second one. And the last one will be a 2 divided by a negative 2. And the solution to each of those divisions is going to be a part of your solution. So negative 4x squared divided by negative 2 will be a positive 2x squared, because a negative 4 divided by a negative 2 is a positive 2. A negative 2 divided by a negative 2 cancel each other out, leaving me with an x, or, more importantly, a positive x. And 2 divided by negative 2 is going to be a negative 1, so I'm going to have a negative 1 here. So the solution is going to be a trinomial. I can't add or subtract any of those terms because they're not like terms. 2x squared plus x minus 1. Your next question is even easier because it's a binomial divided by a monomial. So again, we're going to use this idea of distributive property of division. So 8xy divided by 2y, and then negative 4y divided by 2y. Here's going to be a 4. The y over y will cancel each other out. I'm left with a 4x for that first term when I divide it by 2y. And negative 4y will end up being a negative 2. So therefore, the solution is 4x minus 2. The next question is a multiplication of a monomial by a trinomial. So we need to expand it using distributive property. Each term must be multiplied by negative 10a. So negative 10a multiplied by 2b, negative 10a multiplied by negative 3c, and negative 10a multiplied by 1. This will be negative 20ab. This will be a positive 30ac, and this will be a negative 10a. When I squeeze that all together, I end up with that trinomial. That's my solution. Your next question, what polynomial multiplication statement is multiplied below? So this is really 2x multiplied by 5x plus y and y. So here would be 2x multiplied by 5x, which is going to be an answer of 10x squared. And this is going to be a 2x multiplied by a y, which is 2xy. I can't add them any further, so the equation, it should say equation here, is 2x multiplied by 5x plus y is equal to 10x squared plus 2xy. What is the perimeter of this rectangle? Now, a lot of people got this wrong. So if I think about an easier question, if this area was 10 and this was 2, and I said, what is this side length? Well, you would know it's 5, and you could take the area, 10, divided by the side I knew, and you would figure out that it's 5, because 10 divided by 2 gives you the missing side length. Well, the same thing is true when you're dealing with polynomials. The area divided by the side length you know will tell you the side length you don't know. So again, because I'm dividing a binomial by a monomial, I got to use this idea of distributive property. So 2x squared divided by 2x will be my first term, and negative 4x divided by 2x will be my second term. This becomes an x. This becomes a negative 2, which means your missing term, your missing side length is x minus 2. Okay? And if I double checked it, I could say, okay, well then 2x multiplied by x minus 2 had to be the area. This would be 2x squared. This would be minus 4x, so that would be the solution, yeah. The missing side length is x minus 2. Okay? But I'm not done yet, because now it says, what is the perimeter? So in order to get perimeter, you have to take each side length, there's one side, plus the other side, plus the other side, because this is also an x minus 2, and this is also a 2x. Add all those together, and you would get the perimeter. Okay? Or a better way to think of it, and a better use of a formula that would incorporate a little bit more algebra is 2 lengths plus 2 widths equals the perimeter, or 2 lengths plus 2 widths equals the perimeter. So 2 lengths is going to be 2x minus 4, and I can get this, if I add this twice, it would be 2x minus 4, and 2 times 2x will be 4x. So now I have 2x minus 4 plus 4x. These are like terms, which means I can simplify them into 6x, and therefore the perimeter of that rectangle, would be 6x minus 4. Press pause if you need to copy that down. Copy that down as is. The next question says fill in and model the appropriate equation. So for this one, these are negative x's. These are all negative x's. These are all positive x's. These are negative 1s and negative 1s. So when I kind of complete this area in here, a negative x times a positive x here will be a negative x squared. And these are all negative x squareds. And then if I look at the other ones, this is a negative 1 multiplied by a negative x. These are going to be positive x's in here, because a negative times a negative is going to be a positive. So when I analyze it, the solution is going to be negative 9x squared plus 6x. Now what was the original equation? Well, the original equation was negative 3x multiplied by, so negative 3x multiplied by 3x minus 2. And if I utilize this distributive property, I would have gotten this solution. So the equation is this whole thing here. That was the solution to it. What is the equation? That's the equation. What is the appropriate filling in the blanks? You got half a point for doing that, and half a point for filling in the other part. So for this one, this time we're given the area, and we're given one of the side lengths. So really, if I wanted to think of this as like an area question, this is area equals area equals this, and the side length is this, what's the missing side? Right? So it's just like that other question where we take the area and we'd have to divide it. So I'll show you that in a second. But before we get there, these are all going to be negative x's because a negative x times a negative x will be a positive x squared. These are going to be a positive 1 and a positive 1 because a positive 1 times a negative x will be negative 1. So if I look at this up here, I've drawn my solution. Now, what was the original equation? Well, the original equation was the area, okay, divided by the side I know, told me the side I didn't know. Okay, and we can figure that out too. If I just wanted to expand this using distributive property, I would have gotten the same answer as well. So that's the solution right there. That's the equation, and that's the modeled drawn solution. The next question, a lot of people didn't do so well on. It says, what is the area of this right triangle? Write a formula, substitute, and simplify. So the first thing you needed to write was the formula. Base times height divided by 2 is the area of the triangle. The base and the height. The base is 2x squared plus 2x minus 1 multiplied by the height. Now, it doesn't matter if I do HB or BH. Because the height is a monomial, I'm actually going to put it first. And I'm going to put the base as its height. I'm going to multiply those together, okay? And I'm then going to put it divided by 2. So I'm going to first simplify base times height. And once I'm done, I'm going to cut that in half using my distributive properties. And so first thing I'm going to do is multiply each of these by negative 4x. That's going to be negative 8x cubed is the first one. Negative 8x squared is the second one because negative 4x times a positive 2x will be negative 8x squared. And the last one, negative 4x times a positive 1 will be negative 4x. Now, all of that is going to be divided by 2 because I can't forget that a formula for the area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2. So once I multiply base times height, excuse me here, I'll just move this down a little bit. I end up with this. And each of these needs to be cut in half. So I'm going to get negative 4x cubed, negative 4x squared, and negative 2x. That is the area of said triangle, half of negative 8x cubed minus 8x squared minus 4x. And your last question, I think this is the last question, is 2/3 x multiplied by 1/5 x minus 1/8. So again, it's not overly complicated. You just have to multiply 2/3 x multiplied by 1/5 x, and you have to multiply 2/3 x multiplied by negative 1/8. Okay, so just like we would have done if they were non-fractional coefficients like 2 or 4, we'd multiply them together. So the first thing we're going to do is multiply 2/3 by 1/5 to see what that combined coefficient is going to be. That's going to be 2/15. And x times x is going to end up with x squared. So the first part of this distributive property is going to give me 2/15 x squared. And the next part will be the product of 2/3 multiplied by negative 1/8, which will be negative 2/24, which is not lowest terms because I can reduce that to be negative 1/12. So negative 1/12 is the coefficient, and there is only an x by itself, so that's going to be x. So when I squeeze those two together, I end up with my solution, which is 2/15 x squared minus 1/12 x.